Hello and welcome back to the Connect to the Light video course. My next recommendation of when to get outside and get sunlight into naked eyes or natural light, right? Remember, it can be cloudy too, into naked eyes is when ultraviolet A starts to appear. I also call it UVA, and I say see the UVA. I actually find this window of time to be more beneficial than seeing the sunrise. And since you just heard me talk about seeing the sunrise and you know what a fan I am of that, you can only imagine like, wow, there's something that's more important than that. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's more important, but I would say it could be more impactful to people's health. They sometimes feel this even more. And when they combine this with seeing the sunrise, it's like a potent early morning light exposure that can really provide energy, reduce inflammation, reduce pain, regulate appetite, improve libido. There's so many things that can happen when we start to be outside during this ultraviolet A window. Now, if you recall from when I was talking about natural light, you'll recognize that light frequencies come to us kind of in a really predictable rhythm. And so remember at sunrise, it's like infrared and red is what dominates. Then, we get red, we get orange, yellow, green, blue. When blue starts to create a little bit more dominance in the ratio, that's what turns on the hormone centers of the brain at sunrise. Well, then after blue, we get indigo, violet. After violet, it's ultraviolet A. Ultraviolet A appears. And ultraviolet A appears no matter where you are on the planet, as soon as the sun is 10 degrees above the horizon. So how can you tell when that is? Well, there's an app that I use that I've alluded to before called the Circadian app. I also have a link to that here in the course webpage. And so you can go ahead and get that if you want. But what I found with Circadian app, the reason why I love it is I just have to click on my dashboard and push a button and it tells me exactly when ultraviolet A is in my environment. So I know when it's coming. Ultraviolet A right now for me appears around an hour after sunrise. And so what I do, as described before, I go outside for my little brief window of time at sunrise, or sometimes I'm, doing a 15-minute drive to school and I get with windows open and that's how I get sunrise. But with ultraviolet A, I also, sometimes I'm driving around too, but oftentimes this is when I like to schedule a little walk outside, at least 20 minutes of time outside. And that's because the transition from no ultraviolet A to when ultraviolet A appears stimulates so many things. It starts so many pathways rolling in a really beneficial way in my body. So right now, what I will tell people to do is I'll say, okay, ultraviolet A appears, let's say it appears at 8 a.m. So go outside start your break at 7:55, go until 8:15 and just walk and sky gaze and stop periodically, and just allow the photons of light to interact with your eyes. Again, it can interact with our skin as well. Our skin acts like a second eye, but the most important thing we need to do is get that light into naked eyes. You don't have to stare at the sun. The light will enter your eyes, even if you're just outside, sitting and reading a book. So so find a reason to be outside when ultraviolet A is present. The things that you can, the pathways that are stimulated with ultraviolet A include, number one, you actually start to make serotonin. So there's a hormone or there's a neurotransmitter that's made called serotonin that makes our brain feel good, right? Our body feels good. Well, before it becomes serotonin, it's an amino acid called tryptophan, which is like we hear about that being in, Thanksgiving turkey. So for those of you who are American and we eat this Thanksgiving meal with turkey and, oh, I'm so tired after my Thanksgiving meal, it must be all the tryptophan in the turkey, right? That's not necessarily true. I think it's a blood sugar crash, but that being said, tryptophan isn't a very calming amino acid. Amino acid is just a building block of protein, right? It's a basic block of protein. And so these amino acids are special. Tryptophan happens to be special. It's called an aromatic amino acid. And you'll see aromatic amino acids have these ring shapes. And these ring shapes interact with light. They trap light. Tryptophan specifically wants to trap ultraviolet A light. And the cool thing is that we've got a ton of these aromatic amino acids kind of swimming in the blood at the backs of the eyes. So nature set it up. So we're basically locating these amino acids exactly where they need to be in order to trap the most light frequencies. So as soon as the tryptophan captures the ultraviolet A light that catalyzes that tryptophan to become serotonin. And then serotonin, when the brain senses darkness, becomes melatonin at night. So, and then melatonin, kind of breaks itself down and becomes tryptophan in the morning. And it's this beautiful cycle. So if you want good sleep that night, it starts with getting morning ultraviolet A light into the eyes. And then not only does it help with your sleep that night, but serotonin just makes you feel good during the day. Another feel-good pathway that gets stimulated is there's other aromatic amino acids called tyrosine and phenylalanine. They trap the ultraviolet A light. They become things like dopamine. They also become norepinephrine, adrenaline, things that help us feel good and motivated and focused throughout the day. They also become thyroid hormone, right? They help to produce thyroid hormone. So if you have, if you've been diagnosed, and I don't like people to focus on their diagnosis, but if you've been told you have thyroid dysfunction of some sort, I always think that morning light needs to be maximized for you. It needs to be maximized for all of us, but that ultraviolet A can be very, very powerful for thyroid hormone production. So you also have the production of, there's a chemical in the brain called POMC, right? It's actually a protein in the brain. And in response to ultraviolet A, POMC can become a whole host of downstream molecules, but it takes that ultraviolet A signaling and then it kind of determines what's going on in your body. And it says, oh, I'm going to take more of this particular part of POMC and turn it into ACTH in order to lower inflammation, or I'm going to make it beta endorphin to lower pain. And so we have the ability to make chemicals or change chemicals in response to light. Being indoors blocks all of the ultraviolet A light. So you can imagine that there are some of us who are living and working indoors that never get this signal, never get this stimulus in order to use this ultraviolet A signaling to make us feel good, to lower our pain, to lower our inflammation, to give us energy, focus, motivation. It's a really, really powerful time of the morning to get outside. And that's why people generally say, wow, when they start to practice that ultraviolet A light exposure regularly, because they really recognize the change in the neurotransmitter levels, the change in energy, the change in focus, the change in pain and inflammation. So try to get outside with that ultraviolet A whenever possible. Worst case scenario, if you can work next to an open window because you're inside, work next to an open window and allow that light in. Take little light breaks throughout the day if you need to. Ultraviolet A is there for a long part of the day, but it's its appearance in the morning that really is most impactful. So try to get outside during that ultraviolet A window and then start to do it consistently so you can notice all of those brain boosting, energizing benefits that I just described.